Welcome to We're at the Age from Voice St. Louis.
Today we're diving into one of the most confusing, stressful, and important topics for families navigating long-term care, Medicaid and spend down. We're joined by an elder law attorney who's going to break down what spend down actually means, how the Medicaid system works, and what families need to know to plan ahead and protect what matters most. It's not just about paperwork, it's about peace of mind. Let's get into it. Hey, Melody.
Hey.
So we're back. We're here for the first interview of season 2. So really excited about that. And we're talking a little bit about spend down and assets and trying to make sure that all of our money, our parents' money, our elders' money, our money, doesn't end up getting poof when we're starting to use it for long-term care and things like that. We want to make sure that a lot of times we want to make sure that there's something left for our family at the end of this, or even enough to bury us, pay for our debts, do all those fun things. So, I know that that's definitely something my family's been thinking about. My dad's gone through a lot of health scares where we thought, oh, we should do this. And then going, oh, no, it's too late. It won't, it might not matter.
Yeah.
And kind of gone back and forth on those sorts of questions. And so we're at the age where spend down isn't a shopping term anymore. It still is, but it's not the only term. So here we are. We've got a great guest today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Paul, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're an attorney, but what type of attorney are you?
Yeah, so I'm an estate planning and elder law attorney. So elder law is kind of cool because it's the only area of law that really is defined by its clients instead of the type of work that you're doing. Mm-hmm. So really any issues that impact people as they're in that pre-retiree to retiree age bracket is something that an elder law attorney would be good for. I've been doing that my whole career since I started working. We've got an office here in Sunset Hills, not too far down Watson from where we're recording today.
Love it when our guests don't have to travel too far.
Yeah, pretty easy.
So the big question that we love to ask, it's kind of our new question of the season, is who are you caring for?
Yeah, I care for my mom. She's still on the younger side of retiree, I guess we could say. Unfortunately, she's had some health things along the way that makes her need a little help. And probably the biggest thing that changed is my dad passed away suddenly at age 61. So, they got married when my mom was 19 and my dad was 21. And, you lose your spouse of 40 years and you raise 7 kids together. All of a sudden there's half the stuff that you didn't used to have to do has to get done. So, that was a big transition a little over 10 years ago, where, especially with financial and legal things, she'd never filed a tax return before or doing, the things like that you just didn't have to do. But that's the main thing that I've been helping with.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff that we talk about today with asset protection and stuff like that, that was kind of a defining moment for us.
Yeah. She's lucky she raised a lawyer.
Yeah. Well, she had 7 shots on the second of 7 kids, so.
All right. And the first one doesn't always work out. First one's a doctor, isn't it?
No, he works for J.P. Morgan and lives in Scottsdale.
Okay, so still doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Good.
They're all doing well.
That's great. So, Marjorie, something you and I were actually talking about recently is the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. I think that's going to be a good thing to kind of define for people, for our listeners really quickly, because literally just yesterday I had a slip. I was talking about this and I said Medicare and you were like, you mean Medicaid? And I was like, oh yeah. So let's talk about like the differences between those, just to like a really basic.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and I'll take that question and kind of break it down. So Medicare is the health program where basically almost anybody over 55 is qualified for it. It's not everybody, and it is things. But almost everybody who's over 65 is going to be on Medicare. And there's all these parts, and so we're not going to dig into that. That's another episode, I think.
Absolutely.
But so that's kind of your 65 plus. One thing that a lot of people don't know is that Medicare only pays for a short-term nursing home stay. So if you're talking about needing long-term care for the rest of your life, Medicare's not paying for that. And so you have some other options. Now, Medicaid is what we think of for people living in poverty. So we see a lot of children on Medicaid because we want to make sure all our kids are taken care of. We see a lot of people who have adults with disability on Medicaid as well. And then a lot of older adults end up on Medicaid when they've spent down all of their assets and they need that long-term care. So 2/3 of long-term care in the state of Missouri is paid for by Medicaid. So that's a lot of people who are getting nursing home services paid for by Medicaid. But in order to get on Medicaid, you have to give up a lot. So we're talking to Paul today about some strategies to maybe make it easier to get to that number.
Yeah, exactly. So when you talk about spend down and how it's a term that's used, it's basically reflecting the idea that to qualify for Medicaid, at least the Medicaid that we're most often working with, there's of course a lot of different kinds of Medicaid programs within that Mo Health Net umbrella, but typically you can have a little under $6,000, so $5,909.25 is how much money you're allowed to have and receive that long-term care benefit that, as you say, 2/3 of Missourians are getting, which means they either never had money or most often they used to have money and they don't now. And so, we're talking everything you own counts toward that 5,909 except for a prepaid funeral, car, and they say your principal residence, your house, is exempt. But what they don't really tell you is it's exempt for qualifying for Medicaid, but the state will be accruing a lien against that house. So whenever you pass away or whenever the house sells or whenever they execute on that lien and foreclose, they'll be repaid back out of the sale proceeds. And of course, if you sell your house, you'll now have more money than $5,909 in your bank account, and you'll get kicked off Medicaid until you spend back down. So one way to spend down is go into the facility and say, hey, I've got $100,000. And they say, great, it's $10,000 a month. It looks like you can pay for 10 months, and then we'll get you on Medicaid. And that's always an option. But there are other ways that you might use your money in a spend down so that you can qualify legally more quickly and advantageously than you would otherwise.
Yeah. And in Missouri, Medicaid pays for some home health care as well, too. So I was actually just having lunch with somebody whose mom recently passed away. She couldn't qualify for Medicaid because they didn't want to let go of the $10,000 savings plan or savings account that they had that was meant to pay for her funeral service. She hadn't put it in a prepaid, and it was cash, and that's what Mom wanted to do. And because of that, Medicaid was kind of blocked up, and unfortunately she's already passed away now. But it's it's so frustrating, because we have all these little pieces here. So, and we're talking about that. Is it too late piece? So we talk about look back a lot. First of all, what is look back? How long are we looking back? Like, am I looking back to like my parents' high school years? What are we doing here? How's that going to trip people up?
So some people, you talk to your neighbor, and your neighbor always tells you all the best legal advice, I find. And they say, they just gave all their money away to their kids, and then they can be under $5,900, right?
I love that.
I got $105,000. So what if I just give $100,000 to my kids, and then I'm spent down, right? Well, the state thought of that, and so did the federal government. And so in Missouri and in most, if not all, states now have adjusted to a 60-month look-back period or a 5-year look-back.
Okay.
And what that means is any transfers of assets that occurred within 5 years from the date you apply for Medicaid are going to cause a penalty. And so you really want to be sure that if you're going to give money away, we can fix that penalty. Because otherwise, you can apply for Medicaid, be under that $5,909, but for the fact that you gave away $100,000, and they'd say, well, you're disqualified. And that penalty divisor changes all the time. It's about $7,500 right now. That means for every $7,500 you give away, it's 1 month that you can't qualify for Medicaid, even when even when you're broke and you're otherwise there. So it's kind of a chicken and egg scenario. So can you make gifts within that 5 years? Yes, but that's where it gets very, very complicated, where you oftentimes are going to need the help of an elder law attorney, because we have to make the gift and simultaneously be able to pay for the facility during that penalty period. And so the math kind of gets tricky of how much money are you short for that penalty period, and how do we get some of that money back? And that's where you use all the irrevocable trusts and the annuities, Medicaid compliant annuities and various other tactics.
You're saying a lot of big words there. What are some of these ways that people can protect their money and property within that 5-year period or beforehand? What are the options?
So best case scenario, and one of the questions I always get, and one of the things you've both alluded to today is a lot of people, estate planning and asset protection is on their list of things to do. And
Still on.
and then when it's time, it's too late, right? That's kind of what I wish I had done this. But one of the most common things with asset protection I get is, I wish I had done this 5 years ago, right? Because I could theoretically say, I could give $1 million away 61 months ago, and it doesn't create a penalty. So most of the time, we're not talking about giving millions of dollars away. We're talking about saving the last $100,000 or protecting that house that they spent 50 years paying off, and the equity would get wiped out in a year of long-term care. Well, how do we do it? Best case scenario, you give me 5 years. Create some sort of Medicaid irrevocable trust, and we can talk more about the attributes of that. But for now, we'll say move the title of the house from parents' name to trust, that the parents have the right to live there, but they don't have any rights to the corpus of the trust, and they don't control the trust, and that starts the clock. So if we have that time, we can save it all, right? Because I could save life insurance, that $10,000 savings account that they want to use for the funeral, we could move it all, and there's no penalty. If we don't have 5 years, a lot of us use what's called a half a loaf strategy. And again, it can, I don't want to lose too many of the listeners, because even when I diagram it out, the math gets very complicated. But for example, if I'm $5,000 a month short, so let's just say I have income from Social Security and pensions and all of that, and it comes up to $5,000 too little to pay for the cost of the nursing home. Well, I can figure out, using the penalty divisor, how many months of $7,500 can I give away and still keep enough money to turn into an income stream back to me, basically creating a $5,000 a month pension with the extra money for the penalty that I've given away. So if I give away, say, 10 months, so I have $75,000 I gave away. If I have $125,000 total, I'll take that other $50,000 and say, using a promissory note or a Medicaid compliant annuity, I could say, I can't have $50,000 and qualify for Medicaid. I'm over $5,909. But if I give you this $50,000, can you give me $5,000 a month for the next 10 months? And that way I can afford to pay the penalty of the $75,000 that I transferred. Does that make sense? It's, believe it or not, that's a pretty simplified version of it. But that's the kind of stuff you can do, even if it's too late. There's a lot we can do. One of the biggest pushbacks I get is people in this income and asset category think, I can't afford to hire a lawyer.
Yeah, right? That's huge.
They say, I can't, I'm sure this would be great, but that's for people that, have millions of dollars. Well, the truth is, it's much more important to save your house and your last $100,000 than it is to save the first million of your 15 million. right? Like the difference between having 15 million and 14 million, not that different in a lifestyle standpoint. The difference between having zero money, being on Medicaid in a nursing home, and living on $50 a month, which is how much you get to keep. You can't even get 2 haircuts in the same month, much less anything else that they won't pay for and give you.
Oh, the list of things they don't provide in a nursing home.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have $100,000 in protected, now you can have dental work that you didn't used to be able to get. Now you can have, a meal out every once in a while, or treat yourself to getting your hair done and your nails done and things like that. And to me, that you can't afford not to have a lawyer do that for your mom or your dad or your whoever it is. So when they're like, how much does it cost? It'll cost you 100% of your money not to have that plan.
Yeah.
Or it'll cost whatever it does, and you can say, and we save that house or that $100,000.
Right.
So on the podcast, we talk a lot about caregivers and the struggles working with your loved one, especially your older adult loved ones. And one of the things that I think is really important that we do here is the long-term care ombudsman program. And that's part of a federal program that helps people who live in long-term care. So here in Missouri, that's nursing homes, that's assisted living facilities, that's residential care facilities, and helps those folks make sure that their rights inside those facilities are being upheld, and helps them mediate issues that they might be having at a facility. So if you or your loved one are living in a long-term care community and having problems, calling Voices Ombudsman Program is the perfect right step. And you can do that by calling 314-918-8222. Now, we're talking about like houses and cars and things like that. And often these things are owned by two people. We've got a husband, wife, or whatever partnership situation you've got, but often these houses are in two people's names. How do we make sure that if dad needs long-term care and we don't have enough, to pay for that, can we make sure he gets on Medicaid, mom keeps the house and doesn't have a lien on the house? Or like what strategies do we use for something like that? Because that's the one that makes me panic. It's that surviving spouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So first we'll talk about the both spouses alive, one spouse needs care, right? And that happens very often, right? There's a healthy spouse and an unhealthy spouse, or we call it an institutionalized spouse and a community spouse is what the law oftentimes calls it. Well, in the old days, the rule is you have to take care of your spouse, right? And that's still the law. You can't even do a prenuptial agreement that says I won't pay for your health care. You're not allowed to do that. If you're married, you're responsible for each other's care costs. So that would mean that family, if one of them got sick, they both are broke, and now healthy spouse can't live in the community, can't pay their utility bills, can't buy food because all the money went to the care of the unhealthy spouse. Or what they'd have to do is get divorced. And again, try talking to your parents or grandparents or whoever that have been married for 60 or whatever years and say, I know you guys don't want to get divorced, but if you don't, you're going to be broke, and you're both going to be broke. And that was a bad deal. So they came up with spousal impoverishment laws that basically say we can do something called a division of assets. Now, one thing that people get tripped up about is they think, well, I'll just take everything out of dad's name and put it in mom's name, and then dad's broke. No, the state doesn't care how it's titled. If it's titled in both names or if it's his or hers, it's all both of their assets until you file this declaration of assets. Then we can do a division. And generally speaking, you can keep half of the assets, but not more than the maximum community spouse resource allotment, which right now is about $160,000. For mom, let's say if mom's the healthy spouse and if dad's the unhealthy spouse, we spend him down to $6,000 or to $5,909. Then we can title the house to healthy spouse's name. Once we do that division, we can start moving things, create the irrevocable trust, because maybe we didn't have enough time for dad, but what if mom needs care, or what if mom gets sick 5 years down the road, or what if mom dies? We don't want all the money to go back to dad, get him kicked off, and then undo everything we did. So that division of assets is oftentimes when even facilities that will do Medicaid applications will say you should go talk to an elder law attorney to figure this out, because it can get really complicated. And it's so important to keep the community spouse able to live in the community.
Yeah.
And if we can protect that, maybe they can private pay forever in their independent living, or get home care, or assisted living, or something like that. So, but if you're the surviving spouse, that's one thing that when my dad passed away made me switch my mom's plan to an asset protection plan, even though she was only 59 at the time, was because I don't have that outlet of one of them being healthy and one of them not being healthy. So I only have that 5-year clock to rely on, or that really complicated gift and annuity situation. And you know what? It's like I said, it's been 10 years. She still lives independently at home by herself in a residential home, but that home is protected along with, a little bit of investments and stuff. And in the meantime, I get the benefit of knowing that if I had a chance to talk to my dad, I know that he would have said, if you do one thing, make sure there's always a roof over my wife's head and that my family's taken care of. And this allows me to make sure all the utility bills are paid, the real estate taxes, the insurance. She doesn't even have to worry about all that because I'm the trustee and I'm taking care of all that. So, but her checking account, her IRA, she's living on that. She's, living her daily. She doesn't have to ask me for grocery money. She lives her life normally, So it works out pretty well if you have a plan.
So how in these, one of the things that we worry about a lot at Voice is elder abuse, elder financial exploitation. Are there safeguards to prevent from that in some of these situations where it seemed like a good idea at the time, and then 10, 15 years later, something in that relationship changes, and all of a sudden, well, I'm the trustee, I don't want to pay for that.
Right.
It's like, is that something that happens? How do we protect against that?
Yeah, it's definitely something that happens. So one thing that I think is important to remember is whenever we're doing this kind of plan, we're elder law attorneys. We're not elders' kids law attorneys, right? So people think of this asset protection as because we want to leave a bunch of money to our greedy kids or whatever, instead of paying for the home care that we're receiving from the facility. Not at all. We want to protect the money. Our job is to figure out how to pay for the care that mom and dad need. And we use what money they have, private pay. We use long-term care insurance. We use Medicare and their limited benefits. We use a lot of VA benefits. And at the end, we use Medicaid. And but we do want to remember that it's all with a North Star of making sure we're taking care of the senior, of the elder. So what can you do? First thing is don't just give it away. So we use trust. And the reason we use trust are, when you just write a check to son and daughter with the idea that I want you to keep this safe so that I can get on Medicaid. If son and daughter decide I'm going to use it for myself, guess what? They legally can. You gave it to them. It's their money. Even if it was with a handshake agreement that you got to use it for me. No, you wrote the check to them, or you put them on the bank accounts, or you did all these things. You're giving them the keys to the palace, and with no limits on their ability to access it. So we don't want that. And then even if they are good kids and they aren't going to turn their back, what if they get divorced, and their spouse said, well, they got all this money and it's in their name. Well, yeah, but that was just given to me. It's really my mom's money. Well, your mom's name's not on it. It's not, it's in your name. It's your asset. Divorce attorney will come after that too. You get sued, divorce attorney will come at that. So I don't want kids' problems getting into mom and dad's life. So trust do a really good job of protecting that. Now, one of the keys about this type of trust is we have to use the word irrevocable in it. And that's scary, right?
It's a really scary word.
Sounds very permanent.
Because you say we do this and we can't change it, right? One of the reasons it's important to use lawyers that do this all the time is because there's a way. There's always a way. So even though it's irrevocable, if there's some reason to get out of it, we can. Like, what if we think we're going to make 5 years and we don't? Mm-hmm. This is irrevocable. What do we do then? Mm-hmm. There are ways out. Okay. And it depends on how it's drafted. A lot of times it's irrevocable with respect to the elder, but their consent to the beneficiaries or some special trust protector or co-trustee can step in and undo it. Okay. So those are all things. Now, that all having been said too, I mentioned the second of 7 kids, and all of us are different, right? We have the same parents, we have the same schools we went to, we ate the same food growing up, but everybody's got different things they're good at and things they're not as good at. And remembering who would be the best person for each job is really important. So some people, if you don't have any kid that would be good at that, then we have to find a different solution, right? And it doesn't always have to be a kid. You have to trust the people that you're involving, because we also do see a lot of families. Thankfully, my family gets along really, really well and has, and hopefully always will. There's complete trust between everybody, and they're happy I'm taking care of the bill paying. They're not sitting there asking. They're not asking me for annual account or like daily accountings or anything of what's going on. But there are siblings that are like that. So we are not. Some families, even if the rules allow us to do something, don't qualify for this type of planning because it just isn't going to work with your family.
Yeah.
I'd rather it go to the. I'd rather it go to the facilities or go to the state than have you guys sue each other and go to lawyers.
Yeah.
Right.
We've certainly seen plenty of families here at Voice where we've had a kid who, and I think often this isn't necessarily in the irrevocable trust realm, but taking their parents' Social Security money and just depositing it in their account and not paying for the nursing home, and then we're in a situation where the older adult is being evicted because of non-payment. And so, that is a big concern, elder abuse, financial exploitation, that all happens. And so it probably is really good to have this set up and have the lawyer in your corner already. Because I know all the time somebody says, well, you should call your lawyer for that. And it's like, who is my lawyer?
That's a good question. I love that question, too. My wife's cousin asked that when we were visiting, too. She said, I hear people say all the time, like, I'm going to run this by my lawyer. Like, what does it mean to have a lawyer?
Yeah.
And I was like, actually, that's the type of lawyer that I am. Like, there are a lot of lawyers that do a transaction, and even a lot in the elder law and estate planning world. These people go talk to the scary lawyer, for an hour and a half, pay him a bunch of money, come back in a couple weeks, sign something, and then don't ever see him again. And that's because that's the way the system always was. That's what people expected, and that client almost becomes a liability after that to the attorney. We found, and it really happened after my dad passed away, that I learned that the only way to be an effective lawyer is to see them every single year, at least once, but to remain their lawyer, to update the files, to know what's going on with the family, to understand the background of the kids, we sold that car and we bought this car. Okay, did we do everything that we're supposed to be doing? And now it's not just somebody I met once 15 years ago for an hour and a half. It's somebody I see all the time. We have monthly events and all sorts of fun stuff that hopefully helps us avoid which is the good kid, which is the bad kid. Yeah. Did dad really want this or not, and have years and years of notes about it. Because you always assume the person in front of you is the good kid, but sometimes they're not, right? And
Melody's the bad kid.
You never know.
But like your story, I've seen cases like that where they get in trouble because they're using their parents' Social Security check like it's their own. They're like, I'm taking care of mom all day, every day. And my brother's in California living his life, not doing anything, and he wants half the stuff. No, I'm here every day for free, making sure she gets up and feeding her. And maybe that's true. I don't know. I don't know who the good kid and the bad kid are, but what I do know is Medicaid doesn't let you just use other people's money for their own money. The state doesn't. So if you're going to do that, create a care contract. You're allowed to pay your kids to do that instead of ABC home care. but it should be clear, what are they expected to do? What are they getting? How much are they getting paid? Can they afford that without getting evicted? So again, I know lawyers have a bad rap, but we do serve a purpose in these in these situations.
Like, you're a nice lawyer, Paul. We wouldn't mind
Thanks.
hanging out with you once a year.
It wouldn't be bad. We're fun.
So I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about my parents. And I know I've tried to open this conversation, and, but what's, for listeners who are those caregivers, and they're worried about it. They, obviously, like, the one thing we can't avoid at some point is death, and sometimes illness before death. We don't know what's in that crystal ball. What's a good way for a caregiver, a child, a close relative to start having these conversations with an older adult without, having the whole family meltdown?
Right. Yeah, it's hard. You talk about a lot of heavy stuff, but it doesn't always have to be scary, is the first thing I would say. There are some fun things that we can do, like find tax breaks they didn't know, or like, for instance, my grandparents were living in independent living when I became a lawyer. One of the first things I did was get accredited by the VA. First veteran I thought about was my grandpa, who was in World War II. Never really used any VA services or anything, but I knew that they had a decent pension and stuff with Social Security, and he worked for McDonnell Douglas and had some Boeing pension coming in, but all of their money was going to this rent, plus they were getting home care. And so I said, Grandpa, I think there's a VA benefit out there that you might be able to qualify for that could pay, at the time, it was about $2,000 a month. Hey. They said, well, that would be good. We just did our planning not too long ago. I wonder why they didn't say anything about that. So I said, well, if you don't mind, I'll take a look. And they said, well, no, of course, we trust you 100%. Here you go. So I looked, and the first thing I noticed was this was 2009, and their trust was drafted in 1993. So they felt like they just did it, but it was 16 years ago. So they probably should have been reviewing it. And 16 years ago, they probably weren't worried about long-term care as much as they are, at least now, when they've been spending it for the last 5 years. And there were other things that needed to be updated and changed, but sure enough, I'm like, if I restate all your documents and move some accounts from this to this, we can get you the veterans benefit. And we did, and it got my grandpa about 4 years before he passed away, and then my grandma could apply as the surviving spouse of a veteran, got it for another year, and all told, it was almost $150,000 of money. Kept them in independent living their whole life. They never went on Medicaid. They had a house in Baldwin, that was nice, sold for a few $100,000 and $40,000 in a bank account.
That's crazy that they almost missed out on that.
Yeah, and all they had to do was try. So go to somebody you feel comfortable with, and have your parents. We do another thing that sometimes works is I have a webinar that I can, like, when clients are in that first step, like, we can send them a webinar and with the intake form, and it's 40 minutes of, like, here's what you're probably worried about that you shouldn't be, and here's the things that you aren't even thinking about that you need to be. And also, here's the process, and here's the costs, and here's all the things that are scary, and then you can go from there, because at least then you have some information about what am I walking into, and read reviews for anybody you're going to see what people are saying about them. All that should be hopefully a little less scary. I have some people in that camp too, that I do a class at the community college, and sometimes they'll sign up for something like that. Like, you have to pay for those things, but they're willing to pay for it to not feel pressure that they're having to do something. I like to do flat fee whenever I can, as opposed to hourly, just because I don't like to sign a blank check to anybody. Sometimes there are too many unknowns to exactly tell that, but and then you just say, here's the cost, here's the benefits, is it worth it? But everybody needs an estate plan. I think I've told you guys at like a lunch and learn here in Missouri, if you don't have a healthcare power of attorney, there's no one who can make healthcare decisions for you. Like, there's no default healthcare surrogate law.
So the state gets to make that decision?
You would have to go to the courts and sue for a guardianship to make any decisions. So your parents, the second you turned 18, have no rights over you. Your adult children have no rights. Your spouse has no rights to make medical decisions. So everyone, regardless of how much or how little you have, needs to appoint somebody that if I'm bopped on the head, who's talking to the doctors, you know? Powers of attorney for property. If you wait until grandma's had Alzheimer's for 7 years to start thinking about all of this, we're stuck. If you at least have those baseline documents in place where you can have an advocate that you trust, you can have somebody be your legs, then we have a lot more options. The other thing I would say is, for a tip for your parents, it's not an end of life thing to have an estate plan. It's a during life thing. It will change. Again, my clients I meet with every year, so I meet with them for the next 50 years. There's no harm in getting prepared before we need it, and we have exponentially more options when that's the case.
Yeah, and that I think that's the really big thing that we've been talking about a lot over both seasons is it's about choices and making your choices and choosing your people and choosing what you want done. And these legal agreements seal that up, especially if you are, especially if you're a solo ager. So as a solo ager, that's what always scares me is like, oh, I'm on my own.
Right.
And, I don't have kids that are going to do something. I'm not currently married. So it's like, oh, I've got to do this too. So
Right. And some say, oh, this makes it easier, or does this make it harder? And the answer is it depends. I mean, but the thing that's common is it's kind of rare to go healthy, dead. It does happen sometimes, but a lot of times you're healthy. Something happens, maybe a medical event. Maybe we're kind of like this for a little bit. And to have somebody who can gradually kind of help you age gracefully, that can help keep you safe, that can help keep you independent, rather than pushing off that help until you cause yourself a big medical event, right? You fall and break your hip, and now we're in skilled nursing, when if you would have had somebody just help do the laundry, we'd still be independent,
Absolutely. So frustrating. So if you could bust one myth about elder law or Medicaid, I think I might know what it'd be, but what would it be?
Well, first one that I would say, and if you only told me one, so I'm probably breaking the rules already, but would be that elder law attorneys do Medicaid planning to take money from the old people to give it to the kids. It's that's one thing, is what we're trying to do when we do planning that involves Medicaid is make sure they're getting the care that they need and putting them in the best case scenario for getting that care, and using all of the tools at our disposal. The other Medicaid myth that I would say from a consumer standpoint is that Medicaid benefits are only for poor people who didn't work or whatever. The type of Medicaid benefits that we work with every day are for people just like you and I that went to work every day for 50 years collecting a paycheck, trying to put 3% away in their IRAs and pay off their house after 30 or more years. And now they have these devastating medical costs that for whatever reason just aren't covered as part of our health system. And therefore, we're going to see it all get taken away in the last 2 years of their life.
Yeah.
And like you said, most people in a facility are on Medicaid. You can either be one of the prepared ones or one of the not prepared ones for that. And with money comes options. When we have money protected and you want to go to a facility that says, we can only accept people that private pay for 2 years. If we have 2 years of money, we can do it. We have 3 social workers that are on our staff because there are over 100 facilities within 25 miles of our office. How do you pick? How do you know what's good, what's bad? Sometimes management changes or the workers, change or whatever the case may be, and it's tough.
Yeah, it really
takes a village.
It really is. We're glad that you guys are in our community. We're so glad that you were able to stop by, and I feel like we could talk for another like 40 minutes. It's already
Yeah.
going to be a supersized episode.
Oh, sorry.
No,
I
it's
should
good.
have asked you what the time was.
Well, we have like 40 more questions to ask, so we're going to have you back to talk more.
We'll need to do a part 2.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
But how can people find more information about this topic? Maybe even find that webinar of yours or find you online?
Well, yeah. So for myself, yourestateMatters.com. On that website, all the resources that you can find, that webinar you can request, any live events that we might have coming up would be there. We have a lot of reports and stuff too. I mentioned if you're in the St. Louis area, the community college has great events, and I do one every semester on planning and paying for long-term care. It's 2 hours on just VA and Medicaid. So
wow.
you think I talked a lot today? It's a lot. Otherwise, NALA is where I would go for any elder law stuff. So that's National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. If you're looking for some attorneys in your area, that would be a great place to go because that means it's somebody that actually focuses on this. And there's only about 130 or so attorneys in Missouri that do this elder law. So that's a great resource spot too.
Great. And we're going to be fancy. We're going to put all those things in the show notes so people can just click right to this.
That is fancy.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming by and explaining all this to us. I think I have many more questions, but I think we are going to have to do a part 2.
No, it's great.
It's great. Yeah.
And if you were listening to this and you actually got moved to make that call to start doing your estate planning, please let us know because that's one of the things we really want to see is like, did you do this? Did you get your parents to do this? You know, did somebody in your life do this because of this? We want to know.
Did we actually start the conversation?
Yeah, because that's what we want.
That's what we're hoping.
All right, we'll see you all next time.
Bye.